Panda diplomacy was one thing. A panda pregnancy? Well, that's quite another. Joining us now for more on the successful breeding of our guest pandas on loan from the Chinese government, here's Maria Franke. She is curator of mammals at the Toronto Zoo. And it's good to meet you and have you here.
Nice to meet you too, thank you.
Well, was it always part of the plan when you got the pandas to try to breed them here in Toronto?
Yes, absolutely. Part of the plan was to become part of the conservation breeding program, and we were really, really excited to be part of that. And so the fact that we've accomplished successfully breeding with twin cubs in 2 years is a pretty incredible feat.
How tough is it to do?
It can be pretty tough. They're not the easiest species to breed in captivity. There's a lot of thoughts of mate choice, and unfortunately when you're dealing with small population management, you're looking at genetics to maintain a healthy genetic population. So the Chinese have developed a lot of assisted reproductive technologies such as artificial insemination, and so that's what we ended up doing. We were monitoring Ershun's hormone profiles through urine analysis to determine female giant pandas only come into estrus every 24 to 72 hours once a year. So you have a very, very short period.
Just translate that. Come into estrus means?
Come into heat, where they're actually viable for breeding, for successful breeding in the wild.
For that short a period of time?
24 to 72 hour period once a year.
So you miss that window and that's it?
If you miss that window, it's another year that you have to wait. So we were monitoring her hormone profiles, and in May, everything lined up. So we actually deployed an AI expert from Chengdu Giant Panda Research Base who flew over and assisted us with the insemination.
Their names are?
The names of?
Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad, Ershun and Daimao. Ershun is the female, Daimao is the male.
And how many kids have they got now?
So we now have twins.
You have twins.
But we don't necessarily know if it's Daimao who is the sire, because when we inseminated, we actually went through a lengthy process of importing giant panda semen from 2 other good genetically matched males from China in 2014. So when we inseminated Ershun, we did 2 inseminations 6 hours apart, and we used fresh semen collected from our male Daimao, and then fresh semen from Daimao and frozen semen from the 2 other males from Chengdu.
But presumably a DNA test would kind of resolve this pretty quickly, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. So we're working with our colleagues in China to figure that out.
Okay. I don't know how to properly ask this question, so I'm just going to ask it.
Sure.
Does the female panda have to like the male panda that she's being asked to mate with? Like, does there have to be some kind of attraction there?
There does have to be some type of
and vice
attraction.
versa, for that matter.
Typically, it's the females that choose their mates, and it's not just with giant pandas. Other species, we're finding out more and more that mate choice is a huge part of breeding. So it's not just a matter of getting a male and a female that are a good genetic match and putting them together. There has to be some type of connection. Again, when you're dealing with small populations, you don't necessarily have the freedom to let the female choose between 10 studly pandas. So hence we've...
A studly panda. That's a technical term, I guess. Eh? Okay, good.
That's why a lot of births and breeding are occurred through artificial insemination.
And could you tell whether or not she kind of liked the person that she was being forced to do this with?
So we did try to do introductions for natural breeding, because obviously that's our ultimate preference, that they go through their natural behaviors. But when we put Ershun and Daimao together, well, side by side, not actually together, Ershun was quite aggressive toward Daimao. So we didn't want to risk any injury, so that's when we made the decision to proceed with artificial insemination.
Gotcha. Now, how do you learn for sure that she's in fact pregnant? Do you use the word pregnant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you find out she's pregnant?
So giant pandas are odd in that they have what's called delayed implantation. So their gestation period can be anywhere from 86 to 187 days. What happens is that the egg is fertilized, it floats around the uterus, and then at some point when the female, the conditions, the food conditions, environmental conditions are right, that is when the egg will actually attach to the uterine wall and you will start getting embryonic development. So it's very difficult to determine if they're pregnant. We were monitoring her hormones through the whole process, but the only time you can really determine if the female is pregnant is typically only 20 days prior to them giving birth, and that's if you're lucky, if you can catch an image of the fetus via ultrasound.
How long's the gestation period?
The actual placental gestation period is anywhere from 45 to 50 days. So we were actually...
Okay, second, okay, for women it's 40 weeks, right? So
Yes.
for pandas it's how long?
So delayed implantation, anywhere from 86 to 187 days, but once the egg actually attaches to the uterine wall, placental development is 45 to 50 days.
And how long is she pregnant before she gives birth?
45 to 50 days.
That's okay. That's not much time, is it?
It's not much time at all.
So that's why you don't know till literally, I guess, the bottom of the ninth, if I can use a baseball terminology there.
That's correct. And also, we, through positive training, were able to train Urshun to allow vets to ultrasound her. So we partnershiped with the University of Guelph and our great vet team at the Toronto Zoo, and we actually able to ultrasound. And it was on September 25th where they actually detected a fetal heartbeat. And then on the 29th of September, they were actually able to detect the second heartbeat. So we actually knew that she was pregnant with twins.
And you used, I mean, it's obviously, well, I should ask, is it sort of like the same kind of ultrasound procedure that a woman would go through?
It is absolutely the exact same.
And the panda just lies there and lets you do it?
Yeah, it's through positive enforcement. She's being fed treats like apples and biscuits.
okay.
And we were very fortunate because you cannot always determine or detect a pregnancy through ultrasound. So everything is just worked out perfectly.
And how, they're twins, right? What gender are the
Yes.
twins?
Beg your pardon?
What gender are the twins?
We actually don't know that yet. They're born in such a small state. They're actually the smallest birth of a placental mammal given the size of the female. So when they were born, they were like 115 grams and 187 grams.
Translate that into pounds for me.
So basically the size of a small stick of butter.
A small stick of butter?
Yes.
That's the size of a panda at birth?
Yes. So they have a very, very long developmental period.
This is amazing. And they will grow to be how large?
Females are around, on average, 150 kilograms, and males are around 150, up to 200.
Okay, it's becoming plain now why you can't tell what the gender is at this stage of the game, right?
Yes.
My goodness. So how long? What's the length of those pandas right there?
So it's probably around 3 inches.
They're 3 inches long. And they will grow. And the mother is how tall and how much and weighs how much?
She weighs around 100 kilograms.
100 kilograms. So they got a lot of growing to do.
They have a lot of growing to do.
And how long does it take for them to grow to an adult, what we would say an adult size is?
They would stay with their mother for 18 months to 2 years, and that's when they would disperse naturally. At that point, they don't become sexually mature till anywhere from 5 to 8 years, but on average 7 years of age. So they have a lot of growing to do. They actually don't start eating solid food, or we start offering them bamboo until they're 6 months of age.
They get big pretty quick though, don't they, by the looks of it?
They do. They're growing very rapidly, but they kind of reach a stage where it's just incredible. Their eyes just opened just a couple of weeks ago. When they're born, their bones haven't even formed and joined together, so they're just kind of lying there. So the whole process of them growing and going through all these major milestones is a very, very long process, and they don't really start, they can crawl by around 3 months, and then they start kind of sloppily walking behind the mother panda bear at around between 4 to 5 months.
Do you film all this?
Yes, we've been being very good with our keeping staff, keeping a journal and mapping this whole developmental stage. It's very exciting for us, and
It's got to be a great documentary in this somewhere, right? to watch this thing happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, mothers, of course, in different species react differently to seeing their offspring. How does Mother Panda react to the 2 offspring she now has?
So it's not uncommon for giant pandas to give birth to twins, but in the wild, only one would likely survive. She would pick the strongest and fittest and put all of her energy into raising one cub. So in order to increase the genetics of conservation breeding program, the Chinese have employed what's called twin swapping. So what we have been doing from the minute she gave birth is we've been actually swapping twins with Urshun. So one will be in the incubator and then one will be with Urshun.
Do you think she knows?
She cares for both, so she has not rejected either one of them. Whether she knows that they're different pandas, I'm sure, you know, they have a very keen sense of smell. So she probably gets it. But we have 2 Chinese experts from Chengdu assisting us with this whole process.
Who are over here?
Who are over here with us and working with our Toronto Zoo keeping staff.
So you actually didn't need to inform the Chinese authorities back in China. I presume they did that for you.
No, we did actually. There's a lot of
Okay.
Chinese diplomacy. So it wasn't myself personally, it was the CEO of the Toronto Zoo. These animals are owned by the Chinese government, so it's with due respect. We basically were anticipating the birth, and so we had all of our official acknowledgements lined up in a row, and when the births occurred, I was on the phone to our CEO in the middle of the night and our PR marketing manager, and it was basically them then. There's a lot of people involved in this whole conservation breeding program.
So they get the word out to the Chinese authorities overseas?
Yes, absolutely.
And what do they do at that point, the Chinese authorities?
Oh, it's just acknowledgement. They were very ecstatic for our success because it's a huge partnership, and it's all about conservation of pandas in the wild.
Did they send anybody over here to keep an eye on you or anything like that?
So we had already, anticipating the birth, we had already flown in the Chinese experts, I believe a week before she gave birth. So they were already here assisting with us. So obviously they were likely communicating with their colleagues back in China as well. But
So essentially 2 caregivers for 2 pandas. There's one-on-one ratio here.
so it's a 24-hour process. So it's more than 2. It's 2 Chinese experts that have been crucial and amazing, assisting us through this whole process. But it's also a team of Toronto zookeepers, and it's 24/7 around the clock. So we have some incredibly passionate and dedicated staff at the zoo.
Has it ever been, in terms of the health of the twins, touch and go for any reason?
So it's never been touch and go in the sense that there's been any alarm bells or any situations where we felt the cubs weren't doing well. But because they're born so small and so undeveloped, it's a living, breathing creature. So it's basically, for the first 100 days, the Chinese consider that a critical period of time. So we have to make sure that we have all the quarantine in place and make sure that they're safe and they're not exposed to any disease of any kind. And again, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate, but we're still kind of not out of the woods yet.
So it's possible that even at this sort of reasonably well thought through stage of things, something could turn.
Anything can happen when you're working with living, breathing creatures.
Right.
So,
Here's something, I don't know if there's any answer for this, but I mean, when a human being has twins, when a woman has twins, the notion that she would sort of say, okay, I'm going to pick this one to live and this one I don't care about because I only got enough energy for this one. I mean, that's just, we don't do that. Do you have any idea why these animals do it that way?
It's probably just based on their whole evolution. They're actually a carnivore that now eats 99% of their diet is bamboo. And because they still have a carnivorous digestive system, they need to consume so much bamboo to get any type of nutrients out of it. So it's a lot of energy burning. And to raise 2 cubs, first off, they're also one of the only bears that when they give birth initially, they actually hold their cubs to keep the right temperature and humidity and keep them close to their breasts.
From the moment they're born?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's not until they get older and the female needs to start leaving the den to start consuming bamboo for herself that she would actually put them down and leave them for short periods of time while she goes to eat.
Now, given that you're not sure who Dad is in this circumstance, it doesn't sound as if there is much of a role for Dad in any of what you've been talking about.
No, giant pandas are solitary in the wild, so the males and females would only come together during the mating season, breeding would occur, and then the male would leave. So the female is left to den up and give birth and raise her offspring on her own.
If the kinds of programs that you're involved with at the Toronto Zoo did not exist, would this species exist?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think zoos play such a crucial role in conservation of species through their expertise in husbandry and care. we're kind of part of what's called the 9/11 strategy, in the sense that there's mass extinction occurring across this planet. The 2014 Living Planet guide that was put out by WWF, World Wildlife Fund, says that we're just in a massive, massive decline, mass extinction rate.
How many are left in the wild? How many pandas left in the wild?
The recent study that just came out, the results were published in 2014. At the end of 2013, there was 1,864 pandas left in the wilds.
Mostly overseas?
All in China, in the wilds.
All in China?
Yes.
All in China, in the wild. That's the only country in which you'd find them?
Yes.
In the wild?
In the south central regions of China.
Boy, that's not very many.
It's not that many. They are listed as a critically endangered species. And similar to giant pandas, there's so many other species that absolutely would be extinct without conservation breeding programs.
Can I ask you the Darwinian question here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to sound like such an ogre asking this, but okay, you know it. If nature is meant for them to disappear because they can't make it on their own, you know, should we be going to Herculean efforts to keep them alive?
Yes, that's a really, it's a question that we get asked a lot, but in the end, I don't think it's up to the human species to determine that. And we're in this mass extinction rate by one species, humans. And it's accelerated like unbelievably.
So if not for humans, these pandas would be okay. There are no other predators that they need to worry about except for humans?
At this point, it's humans. It's habitat fragmentation, habitat loss. Previously, it was hunting. Now we're going into concerns with climate change. Wild leopards, jackals, likely, but they just can't keep up with this mass extinction. 22,000 species across the world are threatened with extinction. 3 to 4 species becoming extinct every day. It's incredible. As I mentioned, the WWF report, there's been a 52% decrease in vertebrates on this planet, with a 3 billion increase of human population. The author of The Modern Ark refers back to, if left alone, nature does not need people. People need nature.
How do you decide then which animals you are prepared to put resources, people power, et cetera, behind to try to save when there are so many facing extinction?
It's a very good question. It's very difficult to answer. There are limited resources, obviously. It's not cheap saving endangered species, but I would like to see what the dollar value would be on the loss of biodiversity on this planet. So it's a balancing act. And within various institutions, they've kind of taken the challenge for certain species. We assist through species survival plan, conservation breeding programs to assist other institutions, and then the Toronto Zoo will take on other species, so that we basically funnel all of our energies into certain species. Other institutions do that. So we kind of don't, we're all playing together. It's all about partnership.
I don't want to be crass about it, but let's be honest about it. These pandas are a hell of a tourist attraction, so they probably got a leg up on other species in terms of getting you behind them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's something about giant pandas. They're not cheap as far as being part of the conservation breeding program and moving forward with reintroductions back into the wild. But they are the symbol of endangered species globally. So they're allowing us to tell their story about their plight in the wild, but also all of the other species that are threatened with extinction. And when you figure that a lot of this money is going toward conservation of pandas in the wild, establishing more habitat, more reserves, every other species living in that giant panda habitat is also being saved, like the takin and the golden snubbed monkey, red panda. So saving a flagship species like the giant panda, if we can't save them, then I'm scared to see then what about all the other species, from snails to tarantulas to snakes to other mammals.
Maria, congratulations on your success so far, and good luck going forward.
Thank you very much.
Maria Franke from the Toronto Zoo.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.